Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. What if the Uzumaki elders to Naruto away from Konoha? Harem Part 11. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this and comment for next part. And now let's start the fanfic. Naruto was wandering the forests of water country alone and cold. It had rained last night and he wasn't able to find proper shelter in time before a downpour occurred. Well, he mumbled to himself while walking through the forest, "It's been how many days Ka-chan, Ba-chan?" He asked the voices in his head as he continued his track through the woods. "Well Guppy, to my count it's been about 60 days since you and that girl were separated. I'm shocked that Hiruzen hasn't sent out any men to try and find you," Mito said as she drank her morning coffee on the couch in Naruto's head. 60 days. He screamed into the trees that towered over the now 4-year-old boy. How has it been that long? Well, it would seem that after you both initially got separated, her chakra wasn't detectable for you. That would make sense due to how extreme that explosion was. The residual chakra in the air would have made it very hard for someone like you to find her. Mito explained to the child who groaned into his hands. "I need to find her," he exclaimed as he sat down and examined all the supplies he had left. Naruto was very glad that all of his supplies was stored in storage scrolls. If he had brought something like a backpack to the exams, he wouldn't have been able to grab it before the explosion. He still had all of his scrolls on him and most of them were still full. He had 25 kunai, 35 shuriken, and 20 feet of ninja wire. He has all of his sealing supplies and clothing. The only thing he didn't have a large amount of was food. He had to hunt for all 3 meals since he had used up all of the food he had brought with him since he didn't think he would be gone for nearly 65 days. Naruto put away all of his supplies and continued to walk down the trail he had found. He had been walking a normal pace so that he could try and have a better shot at sensing anyone that was in a 5-mile radius of him. Right now, however, all he could find were animals. This is gonna take forever," he groaned in frustration as he continued to walk. "Well, it could be worse. You could be injured," Mito reminded the child who face-palmed. "Ba-chan, you're not helping," he said to his grandma who chuckled in his head. Hi, she said with a smile on her face. "I'm just trying to make you laugh Guppy." "Well He immediately froze when he sensed people off to his left. Once he was able to confirm that they weren't ninjas, he started to tree hop towards them to try and catch up to them. "Now Naruto, remember to be careful," Mito reminded the boy who nodded his head in agreement. "It's been a very long time since I've been in this part of water country." It took Naruto 20 minutes to reach the people who he had initially. He finally stopped to find them. He noticed that it was actually a wagon being pulled by 2 horses. He decided that he needed a closer look, so he hopped to another branch and noticed that there was a group of people in the wagon as well. After a few moments of observing the group, he figured out that it was actually a family of 5. There was women who he estimated to be around 35 years old. She had dark red hair with green eyes and was around 5 feet 7. She was wearing a pink dress with a purple belt around her curved belly, showing that she was in the middle of a pregnancy. The man he noticed looked to be around the age of 40. He had blonde hair with streaks of gray and blue eyes. He looked to be 5 feet 10 and had very strong beefy arms. He wore black trousers and a dark blue cotton shirt which was stretched over his chest and arms. The oldest was a boy with red hair and blue eyes like his father. Naruto observed that the boy looked to be around the age of 10. He wore green trousers and a brow long sleeve shirt. The second oldest was a girl with strawberry blonde hair and eyes like her father but wore a light blue dress with black flats. She was around 4 feet 3 and was 7 years old. The youngest was a little boy not much older than Naruto. He looked to be around 5 years old. He, like the rest of the children, had strawberry blonde hair. He had green eyes and wore a white shirt and red pants. "Minato, Kushina," Akari mumbled quietly to herself as she looked at the couple that Naruto was watching from the trees. "What did you say, Ka-chan?" Naruto asked internally as he continued to watch the family as they walked down the path. Nothing, Kit. Just keep watching them, she said as she reminisced about memories. Naruto shrugged his shoulders as he continued to watch the family. After a few moments, he decided that he needed to make his presence known to the family and figure out if they knew where Hinata was. Road in Water Country. Agagi-kun, it feels like someone's watching us, the woman said as she looked over her shoulder for the 5th time in the last 20 minutes. Rikino-chan, it's provably fine. No one is in area. It's just the baby getting to your head, the grizzly man said with a wave of his hand. Mama, look in the road, the little girl called out while waving her finger. Agagi looked at where his daughter was pointing to and saw the small blonde child standing in the middle of the road. Oi boy, he shouted as he stopped the wagon that his family was on. What are you doing in the middle of the road? I'm sorry. Naruto apologized with a bow. I'm trying to find a friend of mine and I can't find her. Have you seen her? Naruto asked as he fumbled with his hands. He looked at the mother who instantly swooned over him. Oh sweetie, why are you out in the middle of these woods? Rikino asked the boy who shrugged his shoulder. We were running from Kikurigakure because of the bad stuff that was happening there. We got separated and I've been looking for her ever since, Naruto explained on the verge of tears. Kid, what were you doing in Kurigakure? The last I heard it was in a total lockdown. Agagi asked the child with a raised eyebrow. There hasn't been any news from the hidden village in a little under 2 months due to whatever happened during the Chunin exams. Well, we were taking the Chunin exams and we got split up. Can you help me? He cried to the family who looked at him with raised eyebrows. You a ninja? Agagi laughed at the boy who glared at him with tears on his cheeks. Kid, you look like you can't even open the pickle jar, he said as he continued to laugh. What good is a pipsqueak like you gonna do as a ninja? Naruto growled at the man who continued to laugh at him. He then proceeded to make 3 copies of himself with no hand seals. He and his clones then proceed to annihilate the surrounding trees with fireball jutsus. Agagi and his family were amazed at the abilities that Naruto had. Does that prove it? Naruto growled out as his clones disappeared into thin air. Yeah, kid, Agagi replied with a smile. Now you were talking about a girl. Naruto eagerly nodded his head, waiting with bated breath for any news the man would have. Agagi rubbed his chin in deep thought as he thought about anything having to do with a girl. Wait. Naruto looked up at Wagon and saw that the little girl was talking. He looked at her with wide eyes and a smile. Have you seen my friend? He asked her, to which she nodded her head. Rikigi-chan, how do you know this kid's friend if you have no idea what she looks like? Agagi asked the girl who smiled at her father. Some of the men were talking about how they got a girl in the woods, she said with a large smile on her face. Wow, she gasped. I guess her running off and eavesdropping actually did some good for once. Rikino exclaimed with a sweat drop on the back of her head. Thank you so much. Do you know where they were taking her? Naruto excitedly asked the girl who shook her head. No. Sorry, I didn't hear it. All I had was girl with pretty eyes was found in the woods, Rikigi said with a frown on her face. Naruto looked at the man who shrugged his shoulders. Well, that's all we know, kid. I hope you find your friend, the patriarch of the family said with a kind smile. Thank you, Naruto called to the family before taking off down the road. Guppy, don't forget to ask where they heard that news from, Mito yelled from the couch in Naruto's head. Naruto immediately stopped running and asked the family where they had heard. They told him that the town was about a day's and a half walk. Naruto once again thanked the family and started running in the other direction. Once the family was out of both sight and earshot, he channeled chakra thought his body and held up the ram hand seal. Full body resistance seals Kai. Immediately, all the resistance and gravity seals that were on Naruto's body were released. He was quite shocked at how light he actually felt when he pivoted from one foot and the other. Naruto smirked to himself as he sprinted away towards the village. It wasn't until midday when Naruto found the first hurdle in his plan to rescue Hinata. He had only been running for about 3 hours when he sensed 3 Chunin-level ninjas in the trees. Ah, I don't have time for this. He groaned to himself as he sped off towards the ninjas so that he could determine if they were a threat to him or not. Naruto once again found himself on a tree branch looking at a group of 3 Kurigakure ninjas sitting on stumps eating cooked fish. The man sitting closest to Naruto was around 5 feet 8, had gray hair and a scar across his cheek. He wore the standard Kiri ninja uniform consisting of gray vests with vertical stripes on them, black pants with ninja pouches tied at their waists, and blue ninja sandals. The man in the middle was a 5 feet 2, thin man with balding brown hair. He wore a brown vest over a long-sleeved white shirt, and black pants. The third was the tallest of the group, standing at about 6 feet. He wore a gray coat and black pants. "Hey Rikazaka-san, what do you think the boss is gonna do with that haul we brought up to Iwamoto Cove?" asked the man in the gray coat. "I think he'll be pleased that we brought him so many exotic catches." The man in the uniform, now identified as Rikazaka, replied nonchalantly. "Plus Kaneshima-san over here found us one of those famous hyugas that everyone always wants." "Yeah," the short man name identified as Kaneshima shouted with a fist pump. "She looked so tired and frail that it was easy to capture her. Man, I'm sure she's gonna be a real looker when she's older too." Arkazaka said, a disgusting smile on his face. "Bonobu-san, you think she'll even make it to puberty?" he asked while glancing at the tallest member of the group. "She has to. Everyone wants the Byakugan and they'll do anything to keep one." Bonobu replied nonchalantly with the wave of his hand. "She's definitely going to make it past puberty. They're gonna be ing her the very day she starts growing some teeth." That was the last thing he said before a kunai was seen flying through the back of his head and out his eye. Bonobua and Arkazaka immediately jumped to their feet and drew their weapons. They went back to back and started to frantically look around to try and find who the person who killed Kaneshima was. They then heard some rustling in the trees and bush, but when they looked, all they saw was a bunny rabbit. "What the?" Bonobua asked as he looked at the rabbit. "There's no way that a rabbit killed Kaneshima. That's because it wasn't the rabbit, you idiot." Arkazaka facepalmed at the sheer stupidity of his partner. But there's no one here," Bonobua shouted as he tried to find the person. "Kunai just don't go flying out of trees. What's next? They start talking to us?" Arkazaka asked sarcastically to his partner, who was still shaken up. Naruto had been watching the scene unfold for a few minutes before he got tired of it and decided that now was the time to make his presence to the ninja known. He hopped down from his branch and held out 2 kunai in a reverse grip. "Tell me where the girl is." Arkazaka looked at Naruto and laughed. Usually he was a very reserved guy who barely let out any emotion other than sarcasm, but when he saw this toddler holding kunai like a ninja, he couldn't do anything other than laugh. "Kid, what are you doing here? We're looking for someone who killed our friend," Bonobua quietly shouted while pointing at Naruto. "Tell me where the girl you were just talking about is, or else I'll do much worse than what I did to your friend." Naruto calm stated to the 2 men who merely raised their eyebrows. "You?" Bonobua asked the child who growled at him. "You killed a Chunin." He then proceeded to mimsy his partner and let out a deep belly laugh. "I don't have time for this," Naruto angrily thought as he held up the ram hand seal. He then channeled chakra through his body and smirked. "Bring down the thunder." As soon as Naruto uttered the words of his signature jutsu, a single bolt of low-powered lightning shot down from the sky and hit Bonobua. While the tall ninja was distracted, Naruto went on the offensive and sprinted towards Arkazaka, who wasn't expecting the small child to be able to move at such speeds. "This should be over quickly," Arkazaka said confidently as blocked one of Naruto's swipes. He then backpedaled up to a tree and kicked Naruto in the chest. "Yeah, for you." Naruto went through 3 seals and cupped his hand over his mouth in the form of a cone. Fire style. Giant fireball jutsu. 3 fireballs launched from Naruto's mouth towards the Kiri ninja, who went through his own street of hand seals. He smirked at the boy as he took in a deep breath through his nose. Water style. Roaring waterspout jutsu. Akazaka blew out a stream of bright blue water that clashed with Naruto's fireballs. Once the collision occurred, a large cloud of steam started to rise in the clearing. Naruto smirked and activated his Sharingan so that he could still see through the steam. He then felt the air move on his left side due to his whiskers, so he dodged. Wow, you're a tricky one. Bonobua spat as he tried to punch Naruto while his back wasn't towards him. All you have to do is tell me where the Hyuga is and I can let you go. Naruto yelled out as he dodged another punch from Bonobua. The man laughed as he tried to kick the boy who dodged his kick. We aren't telling you jack shit, kid. The man said as he threw some shuriken at the boy who dropped to the ground to avoid them. Fine. I guess you want to do this the hard way. Naruto said as he went through 6 hand seals and slammed his hands on the ground. Earth style. Headhunter jutsu. Naruto sunk into the ground and started to move towards his biggest threat, Akazaka. Once he found the man, he grabbed onto the mon's legs and brought him into the group. He wasn't expecting Naruto to attack from under him, so he didn't have time to react. While underground, Naruto slit his throat with a kunai. Once the man was dead, both bodies shot out of the ground. Naruto looked at Bonobua with his Sharingan active and put him into a hypnosis genjutsu. 1. Tell me where she is. Naruto shouted as he dashed towards the now hypnotized ninja who didn't make any move to stop the boy. Iwamoto Cliff. The man said in an emotionless tone. Naruto glared at him, to which the man simply looked down at him. Where is that? Naruto asked the man, who pointed in a direction. It's about 27 miles north by northwest. You'll know you're getting close when the trees start thinning and the ground gets more and more rocky. He answered in the same neutral tone. Thank you, Naruto said as he sent a kunai into the mon's jugular. He then took off in the direction that Bonobua pointed him to go in. Something inside of him knew that he needed to go fast. That he needed work harder. He needed to fulfill his promise to Hitomi. He needed to get her back. Without even noticing, Naruto sped up to just beyond his maximum speed even while channeling chakra without his weights. He was going to get Hinata back. No matter what it took. Naruto's seal. Akari and Mito watched the fights that Naruto were in with very serious expressions on their faces. Once he took off towards the cove, Mito turned to a deathly serious Akari and frowned. You know, she said as she poured herself some tea from a pot on the table. He's scarily like Minato and Madara. She said before taking a sip of her tea. What do you mean? The fox asked with a raised eyebrow. Naruto is a perfect mixture of Kushina's determination and Minato's ruthlessness. Sure, he could be cute, nice, and relatively harmless. But like his father, Minato's wrath was second to none, and his revenge could be both quick and effective, or slow and messy. There's a reason why he became Hokage. Mito explained to Akari, who nodded her head still confused. Mito, I still don't understand what you're getting at. Akari, did you see how effectively Naruto took down those men? She asked again as she took a sip of her tea with a raised eyebrow. Yeah, he took down the targets, got the intel, and left no trace. He actually did a really good job. Akari commented while taking a sip from her glass of white wine. 2. Yeah, a little too well. Mito commented to the women sitting next to her. Naruto is a 4-year-old who's a killing machine. He didn't need to hypnotize and kill that ninja. Hell, it was within his power to get that information from them without even using a single attack. Mito exclaimed while setting her cup down onto the table. Akari, I don't think you get it since you're not a mother. But right now, Naruto is starting down a path that could lead to a lot of bad things. She frowned while taking another sip of her tea. I think that he'll be fine. She said confidently with a smile. I mean, we're gonna be there to help guide him, right? I believe in us, and I defiantly believe in Hiruzen, and Hitomi, and especially Makoto. You know, Mito stroked her chin with her fingers. I've always gotten a weird feeling about him. I mean, don't you think it's a little strange that he hasn't sent any search or rescue parties after Naruto? The Jinchuriki of the village. Along with some of his other decisions he's made," she said calmly as she watched Naruto run through the woods. Akari was getting slightly uncomfortable with what Mito was saying, so she decided to change the topic to something else. "Do you think Naruto can keep this pace up?" Mito glanced to her left in the living room and saw two colored status bars. The red one is his energy level, which showed how much energy and stamina he had left. The blue one was his chakra level, which showed how much chakra Naruto was losing or gaining. "Meh," she replied while calculating the amount of chakra and stamina Naruto had left. "He's got about 40% stamina left and 70% of his chakra left, so he should be fine, but he could be getting into some fights later when he finds Hinata. And I can also supply." "No. No." Akari turned her head to give the elderly lady a raised eyebrow. "What do you mean no? You'll destroy his body if you give him any of your chakra. His body simply can't handle that kind of stress. It's barely coping with the resistance seals and the training that he's been doing. Children this young aren't supposed to be training, running, and fighting like this." Mito gave Akari a sharp glare as she deflated any argument she had, vanishing. "I just hope he gets out of this in one piece." Woods of Water Country. Naruto was pushing himself to the absolute to get to Hinata as fast as possible. It had taken him nearly 2.5 hours to get to where the man said that the rocks would start to change. He had been observing the trees in his surrounds while he was running, but now he was able to see what the man had been talking about. All throughout the woods, there were different kinds of trees, like some weeping willows, red maples, river birch, and overcup oak were always present due to the wet and cold climate that Water Country was known for. He also noticed the birds and deer that were always around. He had been hunting rabbits, deer, and raccoons. Now, there were a lot less trees and a lot jagged rocks. He also noticed that he was going uphill for at least half the time he was running. While he always enjoyed a nice run, the constant running was starting to get to him. "I have to do it for Hinata," he thought as he pushed himself even harder. After another 25 minutes of running, he finally sensed other people walking in the cliff face. He smiled when he felt her and subsequently sped up to try and get to her faster. When Naruto finally got out of the woods, he ran into a flat grassy clearing that had a few bushes dotted around it. He took a look around and noticed that there was a very sharp drop off at the end of the clearing. "Those must be the cliffs," he thought to himself. What he didn't know was that they weren't just any cliffs. There were cliffs that were 750 feet tall and had jagged rocks at the bottom. Naruto took a minute to catch his breath before he tried to locate Hinata. He turned his head and found her among 20 other girls of varying ages and races. There were 10 guards walking next to and nearer them. All of the guards were wearing black pants and ninja shoes with gray long-sleeved shirts. They all had multiple ninja pouches on their thighs and hips. "All right bitches, get in line so we can count ya," one of the guards yelled, which immediately caused all the girls to go rigid. Naruto observed the condition of the girls and he was stunned. All of them looked skinny and pale. His eyes tried to find Hinata, and when he saw him he nearly blew his cover. Hinata had terrible bags under her eyes, bruises and scratch marks on her face and neck, and was walking with a limp. Naruto could also make out that she was shaking as well. One of the girls, a young blonde-haired girl, fell to the ground and started coughing up blood. She looked to be around 10 or 11 and was wearing a poncho-like shirt with brow pants. "Get up," one of the guards yelled at the girl, who merely whimpered. "Boss, this one isn't getting up," he shouted to the man at the front, who shrugged his shoulders. "Kick her over the edge," he yelled from the front of the line. The man nodded his head and kicked the girl over the side of the cliff. Her screams could be heard for a few seconds before they were silenced by the roaring sounds of the water below. Naruto locked eyes on Hinata as he formulated a plan to try and rescue his first and only plan. After a few seconds of thinking, he smirked to himself. He kicked a pebble over to where Hinata was standing, praying that it was cross the estimated 30 feet, 9.1 m between them. He was thankful when she looked up at him and her eyes widened. Naruto held up a thumbs up and smiled at her. He then turned towards the guard that was at the back of the line. He grabbed one of the shuriken that was in his pouch and threw it at the man. The guard wasn't paying attention and got it lodged in his throat. Brewer, he shouted as his throat was filling with blood. The commotion caused all the guards to go on alert and start grabbing girls that were deemed valuable. Naruto groaned when the leader of the guards grabbed Hinata by the wrist. Well, this just got a lot harder. Ninja, one of the men shouted as they took up defensive positions. Some of the guards started throwing shuriken and kunai into the woods. Naruto dodged them and shunshined to the open field above the cliff. Let my friend go, he yelled at the leader, who raised an eyebrow at him. And who are you to tell me what to do? He yelled while dangling Hinata above the ground. Give me my friend and I won't hurt any of you. Naruto yelled as he raised his hands in the air while slowly walking over to Hinata, who was thrashing around in the guard's arm. Naruto felt the air ship and ducked a fireball coming from behind him. He then has to jump when he sensed someone under him. Once Naruto was back on his feet, he started going through hand seals, finally landing on the boar seal. Wind style. Giant whirlwind Justu. Out of Naruto's mouth came a large gale of wind which knocked some of the guards back, giving the child enough time to get to Hinata. When he finally reached the girl, he punched the leader in the stomach, which forced him to stumble backwards. You little brat, he yelled as he glanced at the other 8 guards who were either trying to recapture some of the girls who had ran away due to not being bound, or were running towards Naruto and himself. You'll learn to never mess with the Order of Gargoyles. 3. He then proceeded to quickly kick Naruto in the stomach, which caused the boy to keel over and lose his breath. The leader didn't let up and he tried to kick Naruto in the head while he was on the ground. Naruto was able to feel the movement of air through his whiskers and dodged downward kick. He then landed a sweeping kick which caused the man to back up in order to avoid getting hit. The leader glanced over his shoulder and smirked. You said you want your friend? He asked Naruto, who glared at him. He didn't, however, notice that Hinata was dangling over the edge of the cliff. Naruto, he's gonna drop Hinata. Akari and Mito screamed from inside of his head. He, however, was too late to try and get to the man before he let go of Hinata. All Naruto heard for a moment was the shriek of Hinata falling over the cliff. He took one last look at the leader of group before he sprinted towards the cliff and jumped over after Hinata. Naruto, she screamed as she plummeted towards the jagged, rocky bottom. She was trying to orient herself but was failing miserably. Hinata, he screamed as he reached out his hands in a desperate attempt to save her. I can't let her die, he thought as he plummeted towards the rocky bottom. I can't lose her. I can't let her die. I won't let her die. I will save her. Suddenly Naruto felt his chakra draining from his body. He looked at his stretched out arm and noticed that cream-colored chains were shooting towards Hinata. They had a strange glow to them as they shot through the air, chasing after the girl. If Naruto strained his eyes, he could see that something was at the end of the white mystical chain, for it looked to be a small white claw. But Naruto didn't care. All he cared about was saving Hinata. All he cared about was being reunited with his best friend. It didn't matter to him how he did it. Just that he made it happen. Falling. That was the last thing Hinata felt before waking up in the middle of a cave. It's like she could almost feel the weightlessness on her limbs as she fell closer and closer to the ground. What happened? She mumbled to herself as she tried to sit up. She tried to sit up and get a good look at the cave she was sitting in but couldn't due to a shooting pain she felt in her side and leg. Hello, she weakly called out into the dark cave. All she heard as a reply was her own echo, which made the poor girl frown. Great, she thought to herself as she lied on her back. Where is Naruto? She knew that the boy had saved her, or at least that's what she hoped happened to her. She didn't want to go back to those men that had captured her in the woods. She couldn't go back to them. Naruto, she yelled with a little more force. She knew that one of her legs was broken and that was what was causing her to be pinned down. Hinata knew that she wasn't in the best of shape to begin with, but after that kind of fall, she was just glad she did. Well, at least I'm not dead. The 3-year-old mumbled to herself as she waited for her rescuer to return. As Hinata laid on the floor of the cave, she was able to think. She was able to really look back on the last 2 months and go over everything that had happened to her. She came to the conclusion that this world was a dark place. A place that she wanted to make better. A place where a girl her age shouldn't have to be a ninja. Hinata knew that a recently turned 4-year-old and a soon-to-be 4-year-old shouldn't be falling off of cliffs or be in a foreign country without their parents. She knew this from seeing the other little girls and boys from her clan. So why were she and Naruto doing these things? Why were they the ones that had to fight in the Chunin exams? Why were they the ones that had to fight people 3 times their ages? She knew that her mother and father were ninjas, but even they didn't have to do this at their age, right? Hinata didn't want to think about it anymore. She knew that if she started thinking about it more and more that she would start asking questions that she knew she wouldn't want the answers to. So she waited. To her, sitting in the dark cave was semi-relaxing. She didn't have to worry about trying to stealing food from the guards that were watching the past however many days she was with them. She didn't have to worry about finding shelter, or getting water. All she had to do was sit and wait. What she didn't know. All she knew was that she wasn't going anywhere anytime soon. Hinata, I'm back. Hinata opened her eyes and saw Naruto standing over her wearing black shirt and brown pants. He had scratches all over his face and neck along with dark circles on and around his eyes. Naruto, what happened? She asked as she looked at her friend with concern. Well, he rubbed the back of his head while smiling nervously. Let's just saw the wildlife around here is a lot different from the ones in the Forest of Death. Naruto said with a smile before walking away and towards what Hinata could only assume was an animal. There was silence for a few minutes because the sound of something sharp clattering onto the floor. Naruto, who was butchering a deer, turned around and sprinted back to Hinata. Hinata-chan, you're awake, he shouted with a giant smile on his face. I'm so glad you're alive. Hinata was startled when he said this. How bad was the fall? She asked herself mentally as she once again tried to sit up and looked at Naruto properly. Of course I'm alive, Naruto-kun, she said with a weak smile. I'm glad you're okay. Naruto looked at his friend and grinned. Don't worry about me, he said with his signature grin and thumbs up. When did you wake up? He asked while moving back towards the deer that he was butchering. Not too long ago, she replied while over again trying to sit up and properly look at him. I wouldn't try to move too much, he said from his side of the cave. Your leg looks to be broken. I thought it was just my ankle, she mumbled quietly, but not quite enough for Naruto to not hear it. Wait, your ankle? He asked while moving towards a dead fire pit. When did you hurt your ankle? I don't remember exactly, but it was a couple weeks after we got split up. Oh, he said quietly. Silence was held in the cave while Naruto worked on the fire. It wasn't a big fire since the cave itself wasn't all that big either. It was only around the size of a medium-sized room. Naruto looked over his shoulder when he heard Hinata cough, and frowned. Guppy, I told you you needed to get her out of those wet clothes. Mito chided. I'm sorry, but I didn't want her to be. Naruto shouted inside of his head. Guppy, she's gonna catch pneumonia if she doesn't get dry. The elderly Uzumaki yelled at the child, who immediately went still and frowned. He looked over at Hinata and noticed that she was lightly shaking. Hinata, are you okay? He asked over his shoulder while rotating the deer meat that was cooking over the fire. I'm a little cold, but that might be because my clothes are still wet. She answered back to the boy, who nodded his head. I'm sorry, he mumbled quietly to himself. No, it's okay, she said with a small smile on her face. Do you still have all your scrolls? I lost half of them in the fall. Oh, Naruto was kicking himself internally. How could he lose half of his supplies? The only things he had were weapons, bingo book, his information spiral notebook, and his sealing ink. He had lost his food, clothing, and tent in the rocks. Suddenly Naruto looked up and grabbed a kunai and smirked. I have an idea, He walked over to a part of the cave that wasn't being used for anything and started carving into the ground. Hinata heard what her friend was doing and was very confused. "What are you doing, Naruto-kun?" she asked while trying to turn her head and look at him. "I'm gonna make a seal that will dry your clothes faster," he exclaimed over the noise he was making carving up the floor of the cave. "Why you can do that?" she asked in amazement of her friend's abilities. "Yeah." He continued to chip away at the carvings. After another 20 minutes of chipping away at the floor, Naruto was finished the seal. He grabbed some wet leaves that he had found and placed them in the middle of the sealing matrix. He then channeled chakra into the seal and watched all the water evaporate off of the clothing and turn into steam. "It works," he shouted as he fist pumped the air. "That's great, Naruto-kun," Hinata said in between coughs. Naruto walked over to Hinata and asked for her clothes so that he could dry them. She nodded her head and had him turn around and she took off her purple shirt. The pants were a bit more difficult. She had to summon a clone and have it take them off. When Naruto got the clothes, she sent her clone away. This was also the first time she was able to see her broken leg and twisted ankle. "Naruto, how long was I asleep?" she asked the boy who shrugged his shoulders. Like 3 to 4 hours. He answered as he dried the clothes. "Okay, that makes sense," she said quietly. "Yeah, after I rescued you with my new chain claw thingy, I brought you here," he explained to the girl who nodded her head. "What were those things?" she asked her friend. "Ka-chan and Ba-chan say that they are chakra chains, but they've never seen anything like mine before." "Oh really, they sound cool." "Yeah. I'm just glad they were able to save you." "So am I," she said with a small smile. "Are you able to do it again?" Naruto looked down at his arms and frowned. He had tried to do it again, but wasn't able to. Akari had said that they could focus on his chains when he got back to Konoha. "No." He bowed his head in sadness. "Ka-chan said that I could work on using them when we get back home." "Where are going to go home?" Hinata asked her friend who sighed. "I lost my map weeks ago, so I have no clue where we are," he explained to the girl who frowned. "I don't have any supplies," she whispered. "I had left most of my stuff in the hotel room. After we got separated, I relied on hunting and finding berries in the woods. Then those men got me. She couldn't finish her sentence before breaking down in tears. Naruto saw Hinata crying and rushed over to her side. He crouched down and placed her head in his lap and stated to comb through her hair to try and calm her down. "Shish, it's okay, Hinata," Naruto whispered as he tried to calm her down. "It was just a thought, Hinata. It's okay. I'm here now," he whispered to her and she relaxed into his lap. "And I'll always protect you." Hinata tilted her head up and looked to see Naruto with his Sharingan activated. She gasped when she saw that there were 3 tomes in both of his eyes. "Naruto," she whispered as she saw the slowly spinning red eyes. It took Naruto about 25 minutes to get Hinata to calm down. Once she was calm, he summoned a clone to get them the roasted deer. After dinner, Naruto and Hinata just laid on the ground together until they fell asleep. Naruto had been asleep when he sensed 5 people outside of the cave he and Hinata were in. He kept his eyes closed but honed in on the people to determine if they were a threat or not. "Look boys, we found the kid who killed Yuma," one of the men shouted from outside of the cave. Naruto's eyes widened after he heard this. He immediately woke up Hinata, who groaned and protested being woken up. "Hinata-chan, we need to get out of here," Naruto shouted while he made a clone to pack up the scrolls. "Where do you think you're going?" one of the gargoyles yelled as he went through hand seals for a lightning jutsu. Lightning release. Static shock. Naruto's eyes widened as he saw the bolts of lightning rushing towards him. He jumped up and went through 4 hand seals and slamming his hand on the ground. Earth release. Rock wall. Naruto turned his back on the rock wall that he had created and tried to pick up Hinata, who by this point was wide awake. "Naruto, what are you going to? Behind you!" Hinata shouted to her friend. Naruto turned his head and avoided a kick to the skull. He reached into his ninja pouch and grabbed a kunai. He threw it at the mont's skull, which instantly killed him. Hinata, can you walk? He shouted as he started going through hand seals. No, and if I try I probably won't last very long. She yelled and dragged herself to the wall to try and stand up. Lightning style. Bolt blitz. Naruto stretched out his and sent out a torrent of lighting towards the ninja who had just tried to kick him. The bolts hit him right in the stomach, sending him flying back into the cave. Naruto glanced over at Hinata and saw her trying to stand up. Looks like I'm carrying her back to Konoha. Naruto sprinted over to Hinata and picked her up bridal style and ran out of the cave. He looked outside and noticed that the moon was up high in the sky and groaned. It's night time. Can my luck get any worse? He angrily thought as he started sprinting on the water. Shuriken Kage Bushin no Jutsu. Ah, come on. Naruto shouted as he tried to use his whisker to feel where the shuriken were going to hit. Ka-chan, Ba-chan, anyone home? He thought while sprinting on the water trying to escape the 4 remaining gargoyles. You're lucky I'm a light sleeper, Guppy. How did you end up in this mess? Mito asked as she tried to figure out where Naruto trying to go. I don't know. They nearly blew up the cave. I grabbed the cave and just started running. Do you know if there's an island close by? He asked as he ran into the inky black ocean. Depending on the direction you're going, you could be close to Uzu. Uzu. Never heard of it. It's the island where I was born. I think it's 160 miles away. You'd need to run at least 26 miles a day. You get there in 6 days. Then you'd have to get past the whirlpools, which will be tough. Okay, do I have any more options? Mito thought for a second before answering his question. Well, there's Wave Country, but that's 450 miles away. Naruto immediately stopped running to think about the answer his grandmother just gave him. Wait, why is that so much farther away than Uzu? He asked out loud to his grandmother. 1. Well, Guppy, Uzu is about 200 miles wide. You have to run the entire width of Uzu in order to get past it. Then consider the fact that from Uzu to Wave is 90 miles. Add that, the width of Uzu, and the 160 miles to get to Uzu, and you 450 miles, too. And how long would that take me? He grumbled as he started running again. About 11 days if you sprint and run 40 miles a day. Wonderful, he mumbled to himself, and he continued to push forward. By this point Naruto could only barely feel the 4 men behind him. However, he was about to run straight through a rainstorm. He groaned as he tried to pick up the pace and get through so that he wouldn't have to get Hinata any more sick. It can't get any worse, can it? Naruto asked out loud to no one in particular. Unfortunately for Naruto, things did in fact get much worse. After running nearly 40 miles a day for 3 days straight, Hinata's condition started getting much worse. Before, Naruto would occasionally hear Hinata groan or cough while he carried her, but now he could visibly see that she couldn't breathe very well and complained about a sharp pain in her chest. When he got to a small island, he was able to check her over and he confirmed that she had pneumonia. Along with that, her leg looked like it was infected and her ankle was still bruised. He had fashioned splints for both her leg and ankle and had torn his green shirt to make Hinata a cold albeit sweaty compress for her head. Ba-chan, Ka-chan, what do I do? The boy asked as he examined Hinata's weak form. Would he be able to get into Uzu? Akari asked the aged Uzumaki, who shook her head no. Unfortunately, Guppy, you need a seal key made out of Uzumaki blood to get there. His grandmother explained to him, which made the boy frown. You don't have the knowledge to make it. You'll just have to get to Wave before the sickness takes poor Hinata-chan. You only have 290 miles to go. What if I used Ka-chan's chakra? He urgently asked as he picked Hinata up and started running off towards Wave. Naruto-kun, your body isn't developed to use my yoki. I'm sorry, but this will have to be your own strength. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he sprinted towards the island of Wave. My own power, huh? He asked as he ran. I will not let Hinata-chan die. He thought to himself as he ran just a little faster. I will keep my promise to Hitomi Ka-chan and Makoto Ka-chan. I will not give up. From this point moving forward, Naruto was running 60 miles a day using his chakra. Before he was just running by using the endurance that he had gotten training before the exams, however now he was reinforcing his muscles with as much chakra as he could. 3. It took him 6 days to get to the island of Wave. Naruto had been as fast as his body could take him and it had taken its toll. He had never been so achy and tired in his short life. But he wasn't worried about himself, right now he was more worried about who he was carrying. Hinata wasn't look good. She was pale, covered in sweat, and had rosy cheeks. She was now violently coughing up mucus that was sometimes mixed with blood. However, there was some good. The splint that Naruto had made had helped keep her leg and ankle from getting any worse. When Naruto arrived on Wave, he immediately noticed the lack of any medical aid. He searched the village of any doctor or healer but couldn't find any. When he asked around, all he heard was that once a month a medical ninja from Konoha always came and took care of their sick. Naruto looked at Hinata, whose symptoms had plateaued for the time being, and decided to head straight for Konoha. Ba-chan, how long will it take me to get to Konoha from here? He asked as he started to tree hop while carrying Hinata. He did his best to try not to shift her in his arms. If you're going this pace you should be there the night of the 3rd day. She said in astonishment. She had been looking at his energy and chakra bars and they were only 1/8 full. She didn't know how he was able to go this long. Is this the length he'll go for her? She wondered as he continued to hop through the trees. Once Naruto stopped on the first day of tree hopping, he decided to summon a fox and have it tell Sarutobi that he was almost at the gates of Konoha. The fox nodded its head and disappeared to go deliver the message. Once the fox was gone, he looked at Hinata and sighed. Just hold on, we're almost home. He whispered to her as she slept on a mat he made out of leaves. Naruto woke up the next morning with a determined look on his face. He made a simple breakfast for himself and Hinata and gathered them fresh water to drink. Once that had happened, he placed Hinata gently into his arms and hopped into the first tree. It was there where Hinata's symptoms took a nosedive. She started coughing up blood and ing in pain while situated in his arms. Ka-chan, I don't think she's going to make it. Naruto shouted as he pushed himself to go even faster. Kid, you gotta get to Konoha fast. She urged her son while she sat nervously on the couch inside of the seal. What will happen if I use up all of my chakra? He shouted as he started pumping chakra to his legs. Best case scenario, you pass out from chakra exhaustion. Worst case scenario, you and I both die. Naruto paused for a second and looked down at the weak form of Hinata. She was so weak and tired that she couldn't even open her eyes and look at him. Hinata, he whispered to her friend who groaned in response. Just hold on for me, okay? We're almost home. Naru, too. She whispered weakly. Naruto looked at her and smiled softly. Just a little longer, I promise. He then channeled all of his remaining chakra to his legs and sprinted to Konoha. Or at least until he sensed 4 ninjas coming at him. By this point he was only 60 miles away from Konoha. He stopped running and noticed that all of the emotions were gone. I don't like this, Naruto mumbled as he observed the ninjas in front of him. Naruto Uzumaki, under the orders of Danzo Shimura you are to be terminated. We are your judge, jury, and executioner. Naruto's eyes turned into the Sharingan, and his anger skyrocketed. I have been running for the past 10 days from Kurigakure carrying a dying teammate and you think you can just kill me before I get there? He shouted as he formed the ram hand seal with one hand. Bring down the thunder. Lightning rained down from the sky and hit one of the root agents, scorching him to ash. Naruto looked at the other 3 and frowned at them. Usually I don't try to kill on the first move, but I have somewhere to be. Naruto took off towards Konoha, much to the surprise of the agents that were sent after him. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. Naruto did a flip and held up the same seal he just used. Water style. Water whip jutsu. The whip hit the ninja square in the neck, causing him to stumble and hit his head on a tree branch, which killed him. Naruto continued to tree hop towards Konoha but was weary of the other two agents that were lurking in the trees. Sometimes he had to dodge kunai that were thrown at him, but other than that he decided not to worry about that. Until a large ball of mud was flung at him. Alright, that's it. He closed his eyes and found the two ninjas. He maneuvered Hinata in his arms and threw a kunai at both the ninja. One of them got hit in the chest and fell down towards ground, causing the kunai to get lodged deeper into his chest, killing him instantly. I won't let you get to Konoha. The root agent yelled as he ran out of the trees and towards Naruto. The agent tossed some shuriken at Naruto, who dodged them. Naruto looked at the man who accidentally looked him in the eyes and casted a paralysis genjutsu on him. Naruto sprinted towards him and slashed him in the throat, killing him. Someone wasn't in a good mood. Akari said after the fight ended. She now understood what Mito had told her. He was ruthless when he didn't want to be messed with. I just want to get Hinata back to Konoha, he said as he channeled all his Reming chakra back to his legs. He looked down at Hinata, who looked even more pale, and frowned. I won't let you die, Hinata, he screamed, and he sprinted full speed towards the village. It only took a few more hours before Naruto felt the sheer drain of his chakra. It felt like his heart was beating faster and faster as he ran. His legs were burning, his arms were aching. Guppy, you need to stop pumping chakra or else bad things will happen, Mito yelled from his head. Naruto simply ignored her and continued to run. Do it for her. Do it for Hinata. He pushed the last ounce of chakra he had into his legs, and that was when he saw them. The 30 feet tall gates of Konohagakure no Sato. He smiled as a few tears streamed down his face when he passed them. Naruto-kun. He looked over and saw Hiruzen Sarutobi standing in his Hokage robes, waving at him with a big smile on his face. Next to him stood his adopted siblings, Yugao and Kakashi, who had tears in their eyes. Next to them were Shisui, who had a massive smile on his face, and Itachi, who was also smiling. Standing next her son was Makoto, who had the biggest smile on her face. Next to her was Hitomi and her husband Hiyashi, who, while not crying like his wife, was quite pleased to see Naruto return with his daughter. Naruto walked over to them, albeit very slowly. Each step he took felt like he was walking in lead. By the time he made it over to the group, he had nothing left and nearly stumbled. He gritted his teeth as he looked at Hitomi with tears in his eyes. I'm sorry. I couldn't keep your promise, he whispered as he bowed his head in shame while still holding a barely alive Hinata. Hitomi looked at the child and smiled at him. She took her daughter from his arms and kissed him on the forehead. She then looked at her daughter, whose eyes had opened just a little to see her mom. Ka-chan, she whispered as she tried to look into her mother's eyes but couldn't due to how weak her body was. Hitomi shushed her daughter gently and rocked her in her arms. She looked at Naruto, who by this point was willing himself to stand in front of her. Thank you, Naruto-kun, she said with a gentle smile on her face. Thank you for bringing her home. She then moved out of the way so that Makoto could see him. She knew that the boy was on his last legs and she wanted Makoto the chance to see him. Naruto-kun, the elder Uchiha breathed as she collapsed on her knees to catch the now falling boy before he hit the ground. She shifted him to her lap so that he could be as comfortable as possible. Sochi, she whimpered while trying to keep his attention on her. You did so well, my son, my beautiful baby boy. You did so well. She tried to keep her voice as even as possible to not scare the poor boy who she knew could possibly be dying in her arms. Hinata, he mumbled as he tried to stay awake, but his body simply couldn't let him. It was as though his eyelids were made of lead. I brought her back, he said before coughing up blood. Never gave up. Yes, you were just a brave boy, she praised as tears streamed down her face. You are my brave little boy. My brave Sochi-kun. She smiled as she kissed his forehead. I love you, Ka-chan, he mumbled under his breath. Makoto could see that he was losing the battle against conciseness.